أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In this session, we are going to look into how to use AnswerThis IO for writing our literature review. Now, we are going to look into the use of AnswerThis IO to help us, assist us in performing our literature reviews and extracting the information that can further help make our literature and our discussion more critical. For this, what I've done is I've proposed a sample model here with one IV, one DV, and two mediators. Servant leadership affects organizational performance through career commitment and empowerment at work. Now, when we are writing our literature reviews, we do have a structure to follow. We normally start by the individual discussion on variables, followed by theoretical framework and hypothesis development. Now, whenever we are structuring our literature review, we do it like this. So if I have a model like this, which has 4 variables, normally my structure would look something like this. We start with the individual discussion, that is servant leadership, career commitment, employment at work, and organizational performance. Followed by the theoretical framework and hypothesis development, whereby we first look at the individual relationships, followed by the mediating role of the mediators. Now, how can an AI tool like AnswerThis.io help us achieve this objective and add the relevant details into our literature review and help us make it more critical? Now, before we do that, we need to understand what goes into each of these sections. What do we write when we are writing the individual discussion on the variables? What do we write when we are writing our theoretical framework and hypothesis development section? Now, let's say if we are writing the individual discussion on variables, we normally start by writing the definitions. Now, there are ways to search definitions. You have to individually go into the research papers and search for those definitions. Where AnswerThis.io can help us is that it can get us all those papers, and then we can use those papers to identify the relevant definitions. So it is saving us hours and hours of time. Let's say, what is servant leadership? And we click start. So once you press enter, it gives you 3 options: structured literature review, dynamic research assistant, and AI only, very fast, no citations. And now, if you are writing a critical literature review, better ones are the first 2 for you. Now, if you're doing a general search for some general ideas, understanding the basic concept of servant leadership, well, you can use this as well. So, strict literature review mode that provides structured, citation-rich answers. Interactive mode with citations and research context, useful for finding research gaps, research questions, and others. Now, for now, I'm just looking for the literature review. You can have the number of citations limited as well. For now, only research papers. You can do it based on the dates as well. For now, I'm just going to keep it open. Enable double checking of citations. Yes, I want to double check, and let's submit. It may take some time. Now, one thing that we should understand is that we use these AI tools in combination with our understanding of research. Now, these AI tools will only benefit the researchers if they understand the basics of research. They understand what goes into a literature review. Now, if you don't understand that when you are writing your individual discussion on variables, you need these ingredients in order to make it a more critical literature review. If you don't know these things, then these AI tools will not be of any benefit. So one has to understand and develop this critical ability to write proper literature by reading research papers and understanding what information, what data, what literature is required, and then transforming that information, that knowledge, into queries, into prompts, and using these AI tools. Now, defining servant leadership. Here are the definitions or different concepts surrounding servant leadership. Now you can read these and then better understand what servant leadership is. Now again, it's giving us too much information. We normally do not put in everything into a research papers or into a research paper. Now what you need to do is further read through it, or you can ask follow-up question. Let's say, how has the definition evolved over time? Let's say if we get an answer, enter. Now let's press this, and this was one of the ingredients in individual discussion of variables. And similarly, what are the key facets, characteristics that emerge from those definitions? And we did get that from the results as well. So what you are doing is that once you understand what is part of individual discussion of variables, then you can use these ingredients and get the literature. In order to make it more critical, you need to first understand that how to write the literature, and then you can extract more critical information, ask the detailed follow-up questions from the AI tool. Now if you look here, this gives us the details of how the concept has evolved. Now this was the seminal work by Greenleaf. Then the definition was expanded, how it expanded, and all that. You need to read this text and use it for your literature review. Now let's say if we go back here, and what are the scales available to measure servant leadership? Let's say what we get, press enter, let's submit. Now here is the comprehensive review of servant leadership measurement scales. The SLBS scale, the servant leadership survey, the servant leadership questionnaire, the global servant leadership other scales as well. And here are your references. Okay, let me ask a follow-up question. What is the shortest scale to measure servant leadership? Let's see if we've got a shorter scale. Now let's look at this. Now there are multi-dimensional scales and then there are shorter scales. So this one is one short scale, and they validated the 7-item scale. So number 5, let's look at number 5. Here is this, a validation of servant leadership scale on multinational sample. So you can look into this. And then the shortest scales, number 6, they validated the 14-item scale, and then 11-item scale is available as well. So now this is giving you further information into the questionnaires that are available. Now normally we are looking for scales, so this can be a very useful way to find the scales, and there are gaps as well. If you want to develop your own scale, why not use these gaps? Now moving on, this is how you do the individual discussion on variables, and you can ask these questions as well. Now all these prompts will be available in the description. Now moving on, once you are done with the individual discussion on variables, you need to propose your theoretical framework. Now let's say if I'm interested in writing about how servant leadership influences organizational performance, what can I do? I can come back here and ask the question. Or if you've got research papers on servant leadership, you can upload them and then search from those papers. You can chat with the PDFs, or you can search any other papers on, let's say, servant leadership and organizational performance. Let's say what we get. Let's write it here, servant leadership and organizational performance. Search. Now fetching the research papers. Now let's assume, okay, for now let's look at this. So you can open these papers, save them to your library, or chat with the papers as well. Save to the library. PDF is not available, then you have to go to your own resources, library resources, and get those papers. And similarly, let's say, let me ask this question, copy. Okay, let's look at the citation maps. Search by title, paper title, or enter DOI. You can search your citation maps as well. So for now, let's say, if I go to literature review, and let's ask how and why servant leadership can impact organizational performance. And let's search. Let's submit. Now similarly, these are the questions you have to ask. Is there any previous research? What were the findings? So next I can ask this question from that prompt as well. So further I am trying to delve deep into the arguments. And then we can search theory as well. Now this is very important because normally papers are rejected based on theories. You don't find the theory, that could be one reason. So let's find some theories as well. Now here are our results. So you've defined both of them and then the mechanism. So let's say if I ask the question, what theory can explain the relationship between servant leadership and organizational performance? Now if you look here and if you've read the papers, you would see that normally these are the things that we are writing in our literature reviews. But again, read through it, try to understand the arguments, and then you will be in a better position to present these arguments and make best use of these tools. Let's go and click search. Now let's see. So you can use social exchange theory, transformational leadership theory, stewardship theory as well, contingency theory, and here are the references. Now let's say if I want to find, okay, let's say what theories have been primarily used when the dependent variable is organizational performance. So let's say if we want to find specific theories that are used with a particular variable, let's see how we get, or what answers do we get. Now here are a few other details. Let's look at this. How and why servant leadership can impact organizational performance. Well, these were the earlier prompts, so you get all those prompts lined up for you. Here is this, the one that we asked just now. So we've used a social exchange theory in the literature, and we've got these other theories as well. Now let's go back, and similarly let me ask another question. Let's see what other prompts we can have. So let's say if there is any previous research. The two concepts, now you have to explain the two concepts. Let's search, and meanwhile, once that search is done, Submit. Once that search is done, we are going to ask this follow-up question. Now here are our results. And the direct effects. You can now further go into these papers and see how did they assess the direct effects, what mediating roles were assessed, what moderating roles were assessed. Now similarly, you can ask this follow-up question as well. Let's say we ask this question. Copy, and let me paste it here, and let's search. And similarly, now we've done it for servant leadership and organizational performance. Now you can do it for these other variables as well. Now only the names of the variables will change in the prompts, and these prompts will be shared in the description for both individual discussion on variables and the development of framework to establish the relationships. Now here are our results. The spectrum of findings, agreement and disagreement in the research. Now you can go through it and find which research has found a significant relationship, where some research would find the insignificant relationship. Now similarly, you can do this for all the other proposed relationships in your research. Now, apart from the literature review, you've got the library where you can upload new papers, you can import the libraries, enable more precise search, delete the papers that are in your library. You can search the vast database to find the relevant papers, citation map for one particular paper. Let's say if we upload new papers, let me get some of my papers. Let's say if I get my papers on knowledge management only. Let's say we get these open. Now it's uploading papers. And we've got these papers here. And let's go home, chat with PDF. Okay, select from library. So we'll select our papers. Let's say with this one, and let's chat. So we've got this paper. Let's say, what was the sample size in this study? So let's see, what do we have here? So here are the sample size details from this study. Now, study 4, knowledge management towards sustainable competitive advantage. Now this was study 1, interpreting the impact. Study 2, the sample details. Study 3, study 4, study 5, and yes, 5 studies. Now in summary, the sample size varied across the studies. Now moving on, let's go back. Let's go home. Now we've use this feature as well. You can extract data from PDFs, automatically pull out key information and statistics from your documents. So you can use this option as well. And we have previously used the search papers. You can search different papers from AnswerThis.io. I hope this session would have helped you understand how to use AnswerThis.io to shape, craft critical literature review. And this should definitely be complemented by your intense reading of research papers. Only then you will be able to better use this tool. Thank you very much.